Welcome, Dr. Spataro. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Yep, you as well. You wrote the book, Dare to Inspire. You co authored it. One of the quotes I pulled from the book: "We cannot teach people anything. We can only help them discover it within themselves." What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it really speaks to the coaching approach that my consulting partners and I really have adopted and use at our firm at Inspire Core. And it's really consistent with my view of leadership as well. And I also think, just to try to make it a little more accessible, it's pretty close to that hand a person a fish versus teach a person to fish kind of thing. We can't teach people anything. We can help them discover it within themselves. I think our job as leaders, as coaches, as mentors, if I had children of my own, I would say as parents,
Yeah.
is to cultivate fertile ground for people's own learning, right? For them to discover things on their own. Think about somebody just telling you something versus you having an aha moment, having a light bulb moment. The
Yeah.
stuff you figure out on your own is so much stickier, it's so much more meaningful. Our job is to, as leaders, as mine as a teacher, whatever roles we're in, our job is to give people opportunities for that kind of self-development, those aha moments.
Yeah. So that is the inspiration then that you're talking about there.
I don't know that inspiration is limited to aha moments. It's definitely, we can help people find ground to be inspired. I think that's definitely true. But one of the big points of our book, Dare to Inspire, is we have agency over our own inspiration. We don't have to sit and hope that inspiration will be visited upon us. We can actually take action to spark our own inspiration and then to sustain our own inspiration. So it's under our control.
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of times people like to compare inspiration to the muse, if you're familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so people speak of it almost like it's this ethereal thing that you can't really materialize anywhere on your own. You just kind of have to let it come to you. Um, and so when I started getting into the book and reading about how you can spark it in different ways, that was new to
Mm-hmm.
me. At least in
Mm-hmm.
my field, in psychology, you really don't hear too much about inspiration. There's a lot of focus on motivation,
Yeah.
which you get into later in the book. But I guess as a good starting point, what is inspiration, and why does it matter?
Yeah, the way we define inspiration, I think, is really important in differentiating it from things like a muse or pure creativity or motivation. We discovered that inspiration was what we wanted to figure out by working with our clients. We were seeing it in action. We were helping them get better at it. We were seeing how it led to their performance, but we hadn't quite put our thumb on exactly what it was. And so we realized this thing we're talking about is inspiration. And then we went to do all the research on it. And like you said, there's just not much out there. And so our whole quest in writing this book was to demystify it and really give people that agency that we were seeing our clients activate and use, but we needed to kind of make it more accessible to people. So we did a bunch of interviews with executives, talked to a lot of people that we work with and coach. It comes down to the spark of inspiration lives at the intersection of a greater sense of possibility and a heightened feeling of invincibility. So it's the combination of, I see more possibilities, I see more alternatives, I see a vision for what could be that I didn't see before. And I have a heightened sense of confidence to do something about it, to act, to bring it to fruition. So it's when those two things come together, more ideas and more confidence to do something about it, that we are inspired.
Yeah, that's great. That's the ambidexterity, right?
Ambidexterity refers more to working on being efficient today and being creative
Right.
tomorrow.
For organizations, correct.
Yeah, for leaders, which is also really important. But we really define inspiration very specifically around possibility and invincibility.
And so you speak of being able to sustain that. It's referenced as a spark throughout the book quite a few times. And I think most people, again, associate it with something that comes and goes. It's hard to control. So, how is it possible to sustain something that is so fleeting?
Yeah, that's the problem with sparks, right? They burn out. And what are you going to do with just a spark? What we learned from talking with people and working with them is that inspiration is like a muscle. You have to work it, right? Paul Bennett, the creative director at IDEO, said to us in his interview, inspiration is a muscle. It can atrophy, it can be worked on, it can be flexible, rigid, strength giving, it can be all of those things. But you have to work it like you work a muscle at the gym. So that means practicing inspiration. I know that's a really weird kind of way to think about it, but we identified some reliable ways to spark inspiration in the book. And so one of the best ways to sustain inspiration is to re-spark it, mix up the ways you're sparking it, spark it in new ways. But then in addition to that, how you use your inspiration has a lot to do with sustaining it. If you have a great idea and you feel good about that you can do it, but you don't take action, it's less likely to be sustainable. So directing your inspiration to performance, to getting things done, to making things happen is another way to sustain it, to keep it alive and bubbling, the spark burning. We also identified what we call boosters of inspiration, which are just about kind of cultivating that fertile ground. Positive rituals in your life, things that make you feel good. I mean, there's research on making your bed in the morning can make a big difference in how you feel about your day, right? So whatever those meaningful rituals are for you. We're also big believers in Teresa Amabile research out of Harvard on the progress principle and noting progress as you make it and celebrating it as you proceed toward accomplishing meaningful goals. So progress and celebration of progress is a great way to sustain inspiration. And then, of course, we also think about social support and relationships and how important they are to sustaining inspiration. So being able to share it with people, I mean, how great is it when you're super excited about something and you go tell people? That like builds your energy even more and boosts that sense. So, these different kinds of practices and boosters and putting it into action are the ways to make it a practice in your life and to make it something that is both you can spark kind of on demand. Nobody's inspired 24/7. My God, that would be exhausting. But when you need inspiration, you can make it happen and you know how to keep it alive. That's the key to it.
So I imagine then a large part of it would be being able to identify those areas in your life where you're inspired so that you can replicate them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a big part of it, as you say, Johnny, there is self-awareness. So the very first thing to develop is, how do I know when I'm inspired and when I'm not? Seems really simple, but being able to recognize it in yourself is step number one to being able to take action on it and be agentic around it. It is true that the very first job of every leader is to first inspire themselves. Inspiration is exciting. It's also contagious. And so it's really important for leaders to work on their own inspiration. In the course of doing our interviews for this book, we discovered a number of what we call engines of inspiration, reliable ways to spark inspiration when you need it. And we put those into three different categories, right? First, we have engines that are from within you, that are personal engines. And that's things like being connected to your values and your purpose, really knowing your why, activating your strengths, doing the things you're really good at. I mean, think about the last time you felt inspired. You were probably involved in something that tapped into the best of you, right? So that's a really nice way when you're seeking inspiration. Jump in with your strengths, do stuff you're really good at. progress towards success. A fun one that came up that we didn't anticipate was about unstructured time. How often have you had a great idea in the shower or when you're folding laundry or when you're taking a long drive, right? The neuroscience behind that is very sound, that when you're not focusing your conscious brain on a problem, the background processing that's going on is actually really productive. And so timeouts is great. Go ahead.
Sorry. Are you familiar with Andrew Huberman?
No, I'm not.
He's a neuroscientist out of Stanford. He does a lot of podcasts, and he actually just recently had a podcast where he was talking about that, setting time aside to be still and think. And so he said, walks can be a good way to do it because you're not really utilizing your body in any complex way, but just being still and sitting with your mind and not trying to take in all these different inputs, like, take out your headphones, no music, no podcasts. Just sit with yourself and try not to talk to anybody. Limit that stimuli, and it's really good for, I guess you could say inspiring in his way, but his is more like a balance of life type of thing, almost like meditation.
It is, and it is a source of new ideas. It is a place where new ideas are more likely to enter your brain. Our inspiration for that came from Dr. Christian Jernstedt at Dartmouth, but it sounds like it's very much in concert with what you're talking about. Absolutely.
And so you mentioned 5 truths of inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to those?
Sure. Truth number 1 is inspiration is highly personal. What inspires me is not going to be the same that inspires you. And so part of our job as practitioners of inspiration is to find our fingerprint. What's the set of engines? What's the set of practices that help me spark and sustain inspiration for me? The second truth is that we do have agency and choice about it, just what we've been talking about. We don't have to wait for inspiration. We can go out and make it happen. Truth number 3 is that there are reliable engines that spark inspiration. We list 18 of them in the book. You may even discover others of your own. It's really about knowing what gets me to that place of possibility and invincibility, and I got to go back to it again and again. Truth number 4 is that inspiration can be sustained over time, just like we've been talking about.
Yep.
You don't have to let the spark burn out. Put it to work, get it active, work that muscle. Then the final truth, 5th, is inspiration is contagious. It's really hard to be around somebody who's super fired up about something and not catch some of it. I mean, contagious has gotten kind of a bad rap lately, and I understand why. That's for real. I'm not trying to do that. But you're likely to inspire others when you are inspired. Let's put it that way. And that's a great lesson for leaders. It's something to really take in for all people, for coworkers, for colleagues. But we're speaking particularly to leaders in this book about inspiring yourself so that you will inspire others.
Yeah, social contagion absolutely exists.
And inspiration is an emotion. And so it's going to spread like other emotions.
I did list out here some of these engines. There's quite a few. I guess we can just, I don't know if you want to run through them real fast.
There's 3 categories. Can we do it that way?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so there's the personal engines of inspiration that come from within you. We mentioned a couple of these: purpose and values, using your strengths, that kind of thing. Then there's engines of inspiration that come from others and from your relationship with others. This includes things like having a sense of belonging, like when you have found your tribe, your people. That in and of itself can be inspiring. Mentors and heroes fall into this category. Getting help from others, and vice versa, helping or serving others. These are all ways to become inspired. Interestingly, also, vulnerability and transparency can be engines of inspiration. Opening yourself up to others lets inspiration in. We had some great stories from people we interviewed on vulnerability as an engine. And then the third category, there's personal, there's from relationship, and then there's situational engines of inspiration about environments that inspire us, right? How did Howard Schultz come up with Starbucks? He took a trip to Milan And different from anything he'd experienced, he saw the precision of the barista pouring his coffee, and he felt the sense of community of the patrons in the shop. And he said, wow, this is something that could be really cool. We write in the book about my California redwoods. I live outside of Cincinnati right now, but I come from California. We grew up camping in the giant sequoia redwoods. And when I go there, it's church, it's home, it's everything to me. And I feel most myself, and the ideas come, the possibilities introduce themselves. I feel stronger. So from within yourself, from relationship with others, and from situations that you're in. 6 in each of those categories to get you started on how to spark inspiration.
Yeah, and so relating to those in your own way, I think would be a great place for anybody to start.
I agree.
I will say, I feel like what people are most familiar with inspiration are really those situational engines. Those are the ones that you see in stories lots of times.
But the personal ones were really powerful in the interviews that we did. Everything from, Blake Mykowski of Tom's Shoes, right? Going to Argentina and seeing kids that didn't have shoes and really finding his purpose, not to build a company that makes him a whole bunch of money, great if so, but it was about finding a way to address what he saw as this problem of poverty in Argentina. And that tapping into his values and purpose that way really inspired him. So we can't forget to go inward when we're seeking inspiration.
I did have another quote here. The object isn't to create art, it's to be in that wonderful state which makes art inevitable. Again, I mentioned the muse earlier, so that quote reminded me of it. So I wanted to bring it up and kind of see what your thoughts were on it.
It's that same thing of the possibility that inspiration includes, right? It's cultivating the ground for the emergence of inspiration, for the emergence of new ideas, new alternatives, greater confidence. And so as leaders, as practitioners of inspiration, our job is to help people find their own inspiration. We can't just hand it to people, right? We can become inspired ourselves as part of tilling the ground, cultivating it for them. And then it's to help them find their own way. And so it has a social aspect in that regard.
And then so you could almost say that, you want to motivate people by inspiring them, right? So I see this often, and I've seen it referenced even in my own field, probably even in some papers, honestly, that inspiration and motivation are synonyms. So how do they differ exactly?
Yeah, so we would take issue with that. And it really comes down to the component parts of inspiration. Again, possibility and invincibility. That spark of, here's something fantastic and I can do it. Motivation is an outcome of that. And so I'm going to take action to move it forward. Closely related, but different in terms of what they bring to you actually going and getting something done. Inspiration is the impetus that then puts you in a state of, all right, I want to sustain energy toward this.
And there were some other things as well. So a few things that inspiration is not. You mentioned creativity. I guess we can just work through this list as well. So creativity, derivative of inspiration, once again.
Yeah, it's the possibility side, but it doesn't have the invincibility side. And people also find inspiration akin to flow. Csikszentmihalyi's concept of being just totally immersed in what you're doing. And again, I would say that can be an outcome of inspiration, but flow doesn't necessitate a sense of greater possibilities, right? It doesn't necessitate an exploration of what could be. Flow is about falling into what really stimulates you and keeps you engaged. So it's quite different in that way.
Yeah, and then awe. How would you describe that in relation?
Yeah, I mean, what does awe mean to you?
To me, I guess I would describe it as one of those situational sparks, right? So I'm coming into an area and I see like a beautiful statue or some great architecture, and I go, I really like that. That makes me want to do X,
Yes, that makes me see all these alternatives, and it makes me more confident that I can go toward them, right? Again, just keep always going back to those elements of inspiration. I agree with you. I think awe is related as an input potentially, but less the same thing.
And then engagement. I feel like there's a lot of debate around what engagement even is. It's very popular in IO Psych at the moment. So how would you describe engagement?
Yeah. I mean, I think engagement in my mind, engagement and motivation are very, very closely aligned. I see engagement as wanting to and taking part in things, using your voice, using your actions to perform, having your membership matter, right? It matters what I say and what my voice is here, and that's a aspect of your connection to something and how you want to be in it, which is really important and something we are striving for as leaders, as workers in organizations. But it doesn't have those elements of possibility and invincibility. There may be some invincibility regarding engagement, and I could see inspiration again as a precursor to engagement, but they're just different aspects of the activity realm, what you do.
And then morality as well. That almost seems as something that might lead to inspiration rather than the other way around.
I could see that because we talk about values as an engine of inspiration. So I think that makes good sense. Morality has the valence aspect, right, of good or bad, positive or negative, which inspiration really doesn't have. It's just about that spark of possibility and invincibility.
Yeah. And then lastly, grit. So I imagine that has to do something with sustaining inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, sustainable inspiration, I think, could look like grit, but grit has a very specific definition as well about bouncing back from setback, which could be part of inspiration, but doesn't need to be part of inspiration. So they can operate quite independently from each other.
You also mentioned authenticity in the book. So why is that so important in the inspiration formula?
Yeah, it's a really good question, right? Think about how different it feels when you are your authentic self, when you are really comfortable being yourself and showing that to yourself and to others and engaging in your authentic strengths and accepting your authentic weaknesses, right? It's only from a place of that truth that you can really become inspired. Right? If you've got a mask on, whatever form that takes, finding true possibility, finding true invincibility is going to be really tough. So, with all the good things about being authentic in the workplace, in your life, right? All the benefits to relationships, to connection, to your own satisfaction, inauthenticity is really not a stable platform for inspiration. It's when you're being your truest self that you're going to be able to find reliable possibility and invincibility.
Yeah. Do you think that's easier or harder in the workplace nowadays? It seems like they want to put people into bubbles a lot more than not, and kind of cut people off where they're trying to be authentic. Granted, if you're too authentic, you might get in trouble. So sometimes it's reasonable, but what are your thoughts on that?
It's a really important question. I think it's a great question. I think if we are in a post-COVID time, since COVID, let's do it that way, right?
Until the next one, right?
I think people are bringing more of themselves to their work and demanding more of their workplace. That's a form of increased authenticity, I think, and workplaces are struggling with that. How do I keep people engaged? How do I keep them involved in what's going on? How do I keep them inspired? But I think we're going to see more of that going forward, not less. What we know about the upcoming generations, they're less likely to fall in line, less likely to say, okay, yeah, that's my bubble, I'll head right into it. No, it's going to be about, this is who I am, this is what I want. I don't really need you, but I'll work here if we can set up something that works for both of us. That's a very different approach to the employer-employee connection than we've known for decades past. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be really hard. I mean, for managers, I think it's going to be difficult. The call as leaders is to know the people that you work with more as whole people and to make more of a personal connection, to embrace their authenticity with your own and to find meaning in that connection. That allows for more support for inspiration, more opportunity to inspire people, but it also builds the kind of connection people are looking for more in workplaces today.
You talked about meaning, and this generation, there's a sort of a crisis of meaning going on, and I see it referenced quite a lot, especially in pop culture.
Yeah.
So would you say it's more difficult now than for prior generations, perhaps, to attain this sort of thing where you can sustain inspiration?
I think generations now are demanding more meaning in their work. The idea of it's just a job isn't holding water as much anymore. And so people are needing to find inspiration in their work. We believe at InspireCore, Allison, Jen, and I, that it's your birthright to be inspired by your work. You need to find work that inspires you. That doesn't mean if think of an uninspiring job, digging ditches or passing paper or something like that, you can still find inspiration, right? There's the old story of when President John Kennedy visited NASA and he bumps into a custodian in the hallway and he asks the custodian, "What are you doing?" And the custodian says, "Well, Mr. President, I'm helping to put a man on the moon." And so even if the source of your inspiration is pretty far away from your everyday activities, when you feel a part of something, when you feel belonging and membership to it, you can certainly find inspiration in your work. I think going forward, people are going to demand that and hopefully get better skilled at it, right? So that we can all have a richer experience at work.
Yeah, I'd almost say that corporate trends have kind of gone away from that, and it's become much more transactional in the workplace. I don't know if small businesses in general might be better at that. There's not too many studies on small businesses, I don't think, in regards to that sort of thing.
I don't think it's going to work. I think that the great resignation and the quiet quitting and whatever phase of that we're in now is a collective voice saying, I need more from my workplace.
You see quiet quitting. You see the other trend is now to work at some company, usually a larger corporation, for 2, maybe 3 years max, and then try to switch to a different company because you're not there for the mission or the values. You're there to climb the corporate ladder, and it's faster, actually, if you don't stay at the same company.
Yeah. You get the bigger jumps when you transfer. But it can also be about seeking what is most meaningful to you and most purposeful to you. It can be about, I don't have to stay where I am for my career like my parents or my grandparents did. I don't have to be afraid of seeking out different possibilities for what can be inspiring to me. And we probably see both of those motivations in action, right? People are looking to move up and make more and do well by resume standards. But I believe they're also looking for more meaning and more inspiration in their work.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's important to consider, morale definitely plays into this as well at organizations. How certain actions like layoffs, might really hurt people's ability to sustain their inspiration. When they see all their friends getting laid off, it really does put another notch in the belt for that transactional relationship.
It does. And yet one of the engines of inspiration that we discovered in our research was around grief and loss, which really surprised us. But we did find that in darkness, some people are inspired and do find light. Now, I don't think bringing hardship on yourself is a good path to inspiration. But we did find it in there that people do. It's when I'm told no. It's when I lost things. I mean, I want to be careful how I say this and be respectful, but there's great loss happening in wars around the world, right? In Eastern Europe, in the Middle East right now. There's tremendous loss. And at the same time, we are seeing people inspired to launch new ways to help and to provide services and to get involved on behalf of causes that matter to them. And so it's complicated. It's complicated.
I also noticed some parallels to Stoic and Eastern philosophy in the book. Would you say that there's any impact on the writings from those?
I will be honest with you, that's not intentional on our parts, but I'd love to hear more about it. What do you see as the parallels?
Oh, well, when it comes to things like, stillness, self-reflection,
Mm-hmm.
I see lots of parallels to meditation, and that's
Mm-hmm.
in Stoicism and Eastern philosophy, like
Absolutely.
Taoism. It's absolutely used, and they use it as a way to reach that sense of meaning. Which
Mhm.
so it really does seem to all be kind of intertwined in a way.
It does. And I think one of the common threads is about being with yourself and sitting with yourself in the way that you're talking about sitting and looking inward for what is meaningful to you. That goes back to your earlier point about authenticity, right? You can't do those things in a way that's going to benefit you if you're not in integrity who you are and how you're presenting yourself to the world. Yeah, it's I love hearing those parallels. I would love to say that we are deeply educated in those and made sure we brought them in. I think it's that the concepts are so robust, right, that they are going to show up in a number of different places.
Yeah, I think that adds to the validity of everything. If we're seeing
Me
historical
too.
examples of how it was useful to people, and you're doing research in the modern era and finding the same solutions in some regard, I, I, I think that adds some validity on both ends.
I agree. I agree.
We mentioned motivation earlier, and how inspiration is kind of tagged along with it lots of times. There's another trend. Everybody's all about discipline nowadays. Pull yourself by your bootstraps. That's all that matters. Is that the best strategy, you'd say? Or what would your argument be, I guess, to utilize inspiration instead of just
I
discipline?
Yeah, I think discipline actually plays a role in sustaining inspiration. We think of sustaining inspiration as a practice that you have to be you get better at by doing it. And so just like a discipline of going to the gym helps you build your muscles or build your energy capacity, um, practicing inspiration is a kind of discipline that helps you sustain it better. I'm trying to think about relating discipline to possibility and invincibility. I can see strength coming from discipline, and so that helping to build your confidence and sense of invincibility. The part of discipline that I'm a little bit afraid of, honestly, in the sparking of inspiration is the potential for shutting down new possibilities and alternatives. Right? If your discipline is I have to stick to what is, that can get in the way of inspiration. But if your discipline is about working what's meaningful to you and building your self-awareness and becoming more open to ideas, that I think is a very conducive to inspiration and supportive of it.
I think open-mindedness is vastly underrated. You see lots of people clinging to their traditional values in some regards, or some things about their past that may not be so useful to their well-being. That's another thing. In Stoicism, open-mindedness is highly regarded. So another parallel there.
Yeah, and it makes sense that we're reluctant. That new is scary, right? We are programmed neurologically to resist change, and that's okay. But it's the courage to move forward and the confidence that comes from a sense of invincibility.
You also mentioned lack of energy is antagonistic to inspiration. So, what types of energy are you referencing here?
Yeah, maintaining your energy in a deliberate way is a really important part of a sustainable inspiration practice. And we are talking about physical energy, cognitive energy, and emotional energy, all three. Certainly physical energy, it's that what we all know about, when you're sitting for hours grinding through something, one of the most useful things you can do is get up and go up and down a flight of stairs and just get your blood moving again, right? It can help you think of new ways. We also talk about strategic energy resets, right? Sometimes you do a pre-game reset, like I'm going into this meeting, I want to bring this kind of energy, so I'm going to set myself up for that. Or a pivot reset, like I just got hijacked emotionally and I need to change my energy. Or just maintenance resets for keeping your energy high. All of that can help with, again, tilling the ground for inspiration, keeping yourself more open to possibility and invincibility. It's very important to manage your energy for a million reasons, right? For our health, for our performance overall, but certainly also for inspiration.
Yeah, sure. And I see that kind of. I also see some relation maybe to people that might have depression, maybe finding issues with this. And I think that's commonly associated with it, the lack of motivation, but they have no inspiration. They won't be able to get motivated, right?
Yeah. And we actually struggled a lot with that writing this book. We didn't want to pretend that inspiration is a panacea and can solve clinical situations. And we don't want to pretend that or suggest that in any way, right? When people have situations, medical situations that they need to deal with, that's a different world that we're in. When we're talking about people who are free from that kind of clinical situation and are just trying to make the most of what's going on, I think that's the sort of target for what we talk about as ways to engineer and sustain inspiration in your life.
And then, so if you were going to try to sustain your own energy, what sort of methods would you suggest to either sustain or counter a lack of energy for someone who doesn't have those underlying issues?
Yeah. So I'm sitting in my office at Northern Kentucky University right now, and I don't know if you can. I have a picture of the California state flag behind me. I have a picture of California redwoods. I'm looking at a picture of California redwoods, my favorite spot where we picnic at my favorite state park. Right? So I'm surrounding myself by the environmental factors that help me. And I look at those and I think about them, and it gives me a boost. It boosts my energy, certainly emotionally, certainly in terms of thinking, my cognitive energy. And it can make me feel good, which then helps my physical energy. It makes me remember to take care of myself and get up and go walk around for a while or go to the gym or do whatever's going on. Actively managing your energy is something that's very important to do on an intentional basis, on a regular basis. Attending to what's wearing me down emotionally, how do I refresh my emotions, what's got me into kind of funnel thinking or tired thinking, and how do I refresh that? As well as how do I move my body? How do I nourish my body? How do I attend to things like sleep to keep my physical energy in a place where it's going to serve me instead of detract from what I'm trying to do? It's really fun to think about the role of music in maintaining energy. Right? I mean, we all have kind of our dance playlist, and we all have kind of our cool jam, kind of just mellow playlist. Music has such a strong effect on our emotions. It can also be a great tool to help us manage all three kinds of energy.
I definitely feel like I have a different pep in my step when I put some music on in the morning rather than just sitting in silence. So
right.
I definitely feel that one.
Yeah, it's another thing that's not just this is easy. Just turn on your, put your phone on. I don't mean to make light of low energy, but there are certainly things we can do proactively and intentionally to address our energy and to just build up different habits and different cycles in our system.
So I had another quote here. This is a long one. So an organization's strategy is a directive for how it will achieve its vision. On what basis will the organization compete and thrive to realize success? Inspiring organizations have what is referred to as ambidexterity. To effectively implement the organization's strategy, the leadership needs to simultaneously have one hand focused on efficiency today and the other on innovation tomorrow, pursuing both these potentially conflicting priorities. So can you expand on that?
Yeah. So it speaks to, I mean, when you think about inspiration at an organizational level, it's a pretty, I don't know, it's hard for me to get my head around that. But when you think about an organization implementing its strategy, how is it going to compete in the world? How is it going to differentiate? How is it going to realize its strategic objectives? Being versatile enough to focus on being very efficient today. This is a concept that comes from Tushman and O'Reilly, ambidexterity, from Stanford and Harvard. I think they are both. Anyway, with one hand, I'm focused on doing the very best I can today with what I've got. I'm going to make it the most efficient it possibly can be. I'm going to build my confidence. I'm going to build my sense of invincibility in how I'm doing what I'm doing today. But with the other hand, while I'm doing that with what I have today, I'm out looking for what the next thing is that might really obviate the need for what I'm doing right now, but could be the path to future success. So I'm out scouring for possibilities. I'm looking for different innovative ideas to take me to new places, to take our possible success outcomes, if it's market share or geography or whatever it is, to new places. So I'm going to be building my confidence today, doing what I know how to do, but creating new possibilities for tomorrow by being out there innovating. That's an inspired organization. That's really putting it into practice at a scalable level where you're bringing the idea of inspiration to life for a whole organization.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think it's Alex Hormozy that had a quote, something along the lines of instead of telling people how you are, and this could be true for organizations as well, but instead of telling people who you are and what you're good at, instead build an undeniable stack of evidence that you are who you say you are.
Mm.
And I think that's almost referring to that invincibility you're talking about.
I agree.
So right? that builds that sense of confidence and then can maybe inspire your future along the way.
Absolutely. I mean, I have an email folder. I think lots of people do this. I hope I'm not crazy. That's called Good Job. And I've had it for a million years. And whenever I get a good job note, however rarely they come, whenever I get a good job note, I put it in there.
I'll send you one after this.
Yeah. When my self-confidence is dipped, right, I go in there and I look and I remind myself there's nothing more compelling than evidence that you are a good performer and that you have a lot to offer. So it's really helpful.
Absolutely. Yep. For other people and also for yourself, looking back on, I think it's definitely more than just, trying to affirm yourself for any internal reason. Having those external reasons, I think, in the world helps a lot.
Yeah. It's a really important reason why we need to acknowledge others more than we do, right? We think about feedback most often as constructive or negative. And positive feedback, reinforcing good stuff is so much more important. Both are important, but if I had to pick only one.
Yeah, there's a running joke kind of in younger male culture that if a girl compliments you on your looks once, you'll remember it for the rest of your life. And I've talked to some friends about this because it just doesn't happen very often. And it's definitely true. Everybody has their one story of, this girl, 15 years ago in middle school told me my hair looked nice.
Because we don't hear it, especially from people that matter to us, right? And so if we, as a culture, and I think this speaks to engaging the upcoming generations, as we were talking to before, if we can get better and more versed at just offering positive feedback, reinforcing feedback, legitimate, earnest feedback, I don't think you should make anything up, but telling people when they did something great, that's going to help a lot with a lot of these issues.
I did have a last question here. So, much like people, organizations require purpose or meaning to spark inspiration. Do you see our modern world as a challenge then, when again so many people seem to be going through personal crises of meaning?
We all have an opportunity to get clear about our why, just our life purpose. Right? I used to have my undergraduate students work on their life purpose, and they were like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" But it's so critical to feel connected to our why, and you can have more than one, right? I can have a why that is I'm a family member in a really sweet, loving, Mediterranean, crazy family. and contributing to that is important to me. Another of my why is I'm in my job as a professor and a consultant to help people become their best selves. And when I'm lost in a pile of grading, which is always hell, or if I have an interaction with a student that's really defeating, if I go back to that why, that's my re-energizer. That's what helps me feel connected again to my energy and to my motivation and to my inspiration. And so we may have a crisis of it now. I think a lot of us are searching. I think we don't have any idea the effects of COVID. And my hypothesis is that it got a lot of us thinking about our why and what's it all for and what's going on. Those are valiant searches. I don't think it's a bad thing that we're searching. I think we need to help each other find firm ground, find stuff that really resonates and is meaningful to us. That's part of the path to authenticity, right? When I know my why, when I have my meaning, then all I got to do is find a job that taps into it. I get that's a big deal, but that's a lot easier than finding a great job when you have no idea what is going to be meaningful to you. Going inward again, finding out from who we are as ourselves. So the people that are on that crisis journey, I want to support and help move them forward through that, as opposed to discourage or see that as a detriment to our workplace. I think it's a big opportunity.
Absolutely. Do you think that COVID then had more of an impact recently, and that's where we're seeing that from?
I think through the whole thing, people went through a lot. We don't know yet. I don't know. I see different levels of engagement in my workplace. There are times when people are just really checked out. There are times when they're super passionate about things. I don't see it yet. I just know that it's different from what it was before. And I think it has to play itself out a little bit for us to really understand it and get under it from a research standpoint.
It does make sense. People would probably be talking about it more if they had a couple of years to themselves, especially if you're working remotely. You're probably in your head a lot more often than you would be otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing of, wait, I don't have to go to the office every day to be productive. Well, that throws everything up in the air and I get to rethink everything. Well, it's hard to throw everything up in the air and rethink everything, but man, that's worth it. Look where you could come out on the other side.
So do you think remote work's here to stay? Do you think it's good?
I think there's a lot of opportunity in it. I believe wholeheartedly in the value of face-to-face contact, but I don't think that has to come in the form of we all work in the same place every day. I think there are ways to engineer face-to-face contact and offsites and regular
the
meetings.
Metaverse.
Hybrid schedules, whatever it is, that we can make remote work be something that's real. I certainly would love to blow a hole through the myth that people are less productive when they're working at home. I have way too much evidence to the contrary.
Seems to be a recent trend and among executives lots of times. And I'm not sure if it's a logical argument for them to make that claim because they need to retain their office space.
Right. Which is not a good reason. And I would say to an executive, spend time on getting to know your people and what inspires them in their work instead of spending time trying to control where they're doing the work. You're going to get a whole lot more out of them if they're inspired and engaged in what's happening wherever they are. Yeah.
Not micromanagement. Yeah. That's not helpful for anybody.
We don't like that. No. Yeah.
Well, this has been great. Where could people find you if they'd like to hear more?
Oh, I would be very happy to be contacted by anyone who wants to talk about these topics more. You can find me at InspireCore, where my partners, Allison Holzer and Jen Grace Barron, and I work together, at my email address, which is just Sandy@InspireCore, inspire and then corps.com. But I'm also a professor at Northern Kentucky University, and so you can track me down here. If you Google me, you'll find me on LinkedIn, and I'm very happy to hear from folks who want to talk about these issues.
All right. Do you have anything else in the pipeline?
Not books. We're really spending our time these days putting it into practice and in this VUCA world, right? With all that's going on, just keeping our arms around helping people manage the roller coaster of it all. has kept us pretty busy. So we'll see what comes next on the publishing front. Right now, we're deep in the practice of it all.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for coming on. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you so much. What a great conversation. I appreciate it.